Hello, beautiful humans. I'm Alena Turley, Somatic Therapist, mother of 3, a wife of 1, educator, and a guide to the human experience. Each episode will explore tools, stories, integrated practices that can help you reset or reconnect and step into that deeper sense of clarity with more joy and a sense of your impact or purpose. We do not need more hustle. We need more heart, more presence, more alignment. Welcome to the Unboxable. Welcome to the 100th episode. I got to admit, I've been waiting for the perfect time to record this episode because it feels like a milestone, a really exciting milestone. But you know what? There just isn't one. And every time I have sat down to record it, something's happened. Even this morning I sat down and I asked my lovely boy sitting outside this recording room, can you turn the TV down? And then he resisted, and then there was a little exchange and it was tricky. And I thought, oh, well, now I can't record this episode because, I'm not feeling right. And then I thought, you know what? That's just an excuse. That is what we do when we're facing really big things, taking a big step, thinking about how to take this leap into the next edge of our growth. And I thought, well, that's the perfect time, really, isn't it? I feel a little emotional. I feel a little bit real. And that's actually what this podcast is all about. So recently I met a really beautiful new friend and she said to me, you have to release episodes every week. And I haven't been because private practice got busy and, life, just because life. And then I realized that this is actually a great passion of mine, telling stories, sharing truths, and staying connected. So I'm back and I'm committing to one a week. Oh my gosh, goodness help me. And it's going to be great. I'm really excited. So this 100th episode, funnily enough, the theme of it came to me in that little moment just before you drop off to sleep, that really powerful moment where the veil between your unconscious, subconscious, the unseen world and the seen world is the most thin, where you get to have this different perspective and this different experience of being human, of being a soul, body, mind, all together in one thing. And I do genuinely believe that the body is a consciousness in itself, that we are gifted in this human life. Somehow we get to learn about it. We get to have this relationship with it. And I was recently listening to Clarissa Pinkola Estes, this beautiful, beautiful recorded book called The Joyous Body that was recommended by a mentor of mine. And it was amazing the way she talked about the relationship with the body. Like, would you ever starve a friend, or would you ever not offer a friend a drink, or would you ever drug a friend? It's beautiful the way she talks about how we treat our bodies and how it is this relationship, literally lifelong relationship, and that we need to experience that relationship like we would experience a relationship with a dear friend and companion, because that is genuinely what our body is. It's our most intimate companion. So yeah, I really love that take on it, and it kind of goes in line with the theme of this podcast today, which is when we have a belief that goes beyond, that defies logic or science or really rational thought, but yet it stays. So we carry beliefs, right? We carry beliefs consciously and unconsciously in our body mind. And honestly, this was one that for me, I couldn't shake it, no matter what happened. And I'll go into some detail. It's about the bringing into the world of my 3rd child. So this boy, who now is 9 and who I birthed at the age of 45, was a long time coming. For some reason, I could not shake the belief that he was meant to be here. And it started off with, I guess, meeting my husband, my one husband, who is an incredible man in his own right and who completely changed my life and the life of my son, who was 7 at the time that we met. And we met, in my late 30s, and he really wanted a family and so did I. And we had our struggles. We had many things that got in the way of us having children. And we were very fortunate in that despite losing a child, losing a baby, losing an embryo who I carried to 12 weeks, that was our first. And that was really tough. That was really, really tough, and quite early in our relationship as well. And then about 6 months later, I conceived my daughter, had a crazy difficult pregnancy and birthed her at the age of almost 41. And then we really, really had our heart set on having one more child together. And it was a little bit, I guess, to the gods. I was 41, reasonably healthy actually. I definitely had the body health and mindset of someone a little younger, I'd say. And when I saw acupuncturists and people who can judge these things, they would say, oh, your body's not that old, it's much younger and things like that. And I've been pretty blessed with a pretty healthy body and a pretty healthy life. Nonetheless, for the next 4 years, I went on a massive journey of trying to conceive and trying to hold our next child. And it was extremely challenging, but also quite life-changing. I learned so much along the way. Just a quick pause here. If what we're talking about feels like it's speaking directly to you, especially if you're ready to move beyond the daily hustle toward a deeper alignment, I'd love to invite you into my ongoing support system for women who want real-life somatic tools to stay resource-centered and deeply connected. It's based on years and years of personal experience and training, and also brings in the help of other experts in all kinds of amazing fields. Inside it, you'll find live monthly resets and a beautiful, intimate community and all the support you need to walk your path with confidence. To learn more and to join us, just head over to alenaturley.com or find the link in the show notes. Now let's get back into it. So we had our daughter. I felt pretty depleted after the birth of my daughter because the pregnancy had been pretty taxing. I'd had gestational diabetes and reflux and couldn't sleep lying down. I had to sleep sitting up. It was crazy. Had an amazing birth. I was very fortunate, and she was a very, very non-sleepy baby for the first 4 months. I later found out that was related to feeding patterns. I'd been given really poor information about breastfeeding. So she was very hungry, and I didn't work that out till about 4 or 5 months in. So eventually she learned to sleep, and she adapted and began to sleep a lot better, and I adapted, and she got the nutrition that she needed. But throughout that process, I was very depleted. And so although following her birth and her first year, I was trying to conceive, we got married, I was studying education, and it was a very postgrad education as an adult. I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. And during that year of postgraduate education, I would go on to have 4 miscarriages. I was one of those people that, as a young woman, I did not understand anything about miscarriage or how upsetting it is for a family to lose an unborn baby or to lose a fetus. And it was, to have a pregnancy end, it was distressing. And I was studying and also caring for my daughter and also my son, who was by then about 10. And it was a really tough year. And I loved it as well. Our life was amazing. We had a very happy family, happy, healthy family. But, we were renting a house. We weren't settled. We hadn't found where we wanted to live forever. And it was really, really unstable. I just felt unstable, and I would, be so invested in this idea that we had another baby coming to us, but also miscarriage after miscarriage. And I remember every single one. And some of them, it was the go to the scan and there's no heartbeat, which is just so distressing and heartbreaking. And my heart goes out to anyone who's experienced that. There's no scale of these things. Some of them, it was the classic, something would happen in my body and I would know I was losing the baby. And then also there's those moments where you go to the hospital to get it checked and have the scans, and they're not very good sometimes. In emergency, they're not very good with that sort of situation. They just put you in a room and say, just wait and see. And it's so emotional and upsetting. And it was a tough year, very tough year, all the while getting, high distinctions at university for the first 3 months. It was ridiculous. putting so much pressure on myself, and I was minding my daughter, spending time with her, being her main carer about 3-4 days a week, and then squeezing university into 2 days and studying all weekend. It was just ridiculous. And so lots of pressure. Meanwhile, trying to work out what's going on in the body and really going on a spiritual journey as well of like, why do I believe this baby needs to be in the world, and what do I need to release or let go of in order for that to happen? And it was a deep process. I was seeing all kinds of alternative practitioners, some of them on the more spiritual side, some of them on the more biomechanical side, getting treatments in the body and in the pelvis and in the womb, and, getting all sorts of womb massage and going through a process of like not drinking and eating whole food and all of these things. And then eventually, after attempting IVF, where they just said, you're infertile, basically, they said to me, and that was a hard phone call. One blood test, and a fertility specialist, one of the best in Sydney, said to me, "You kind of babies, you're infertile." And I was like, on one blood test? Wow. And everything in me said, that's not true. That's just not true. So then I changed fertility doctors, and he said, look, there's quite possibly, a remote possibility. There's no mechanical reason why you can't conceive. There's quite possibly a way that you could conceive. We just don't know. And, did all the tests. And so we went into IVF, and basically after a month, they just said, look, there's really not enough eggs there to warrant doing IVF. Again, everything in me said, I know there's one good one. It's a very strange feeling, but also it saved us a lot of money. But after doing all of the IVF drugs and chemicals, it took me another year before I was able to conceive, which was sobering as well, because I'd always had no trouble conceiving. I just had trouble carrying. All of that to say, everything in me said, you're meant to have this baby. And because I've had a long history of trusting my body and my beliefs, and knowing the difference between a belief that is held deeply and a belief that is more mental, psychological, I guess, I knew that this was more like a deep knowing. This was an intuition. This was a deep knowing that came from a place other than the rational, other than the seen world, other than what made sense. And yet I felt it deeply in my bones. It's hard to explain what that feels like when everyone's saying why. I remember a friend even asking me, a trusted friend, saying, why are you still trying to have a baby after all of this? And I was like, I can't tell you. I don't know. I just know it's meant to be. So after a long while, about 4 years trying to conceive, it was a very tough time. And, and full credit to my husband, who was an amazing support and also going through his own process. And I believe there was a spiritual process we were all going through in our family to hold the reality of another child. And it's hard to put that into words. It's an experience that is difficult to describe. But we were all in, and we got to the end of that year and we decided to move overseas. We were like, look, maybe this is it. Maybe there's no baby coming. Okay. And so we did this amazing thing called the Whole30, which is a whole food, anti-inflammatory hormone reset diet for 30 days of only whole food. And it's actually freely available online. It's fantastic, the Whole30. And I felt amazing. I was sleeping better than I'd ever slept. I reckon it really replenished me, actually. And we moved overseas. It was a pretty precarious time. My husband had some work that fell through, so we got there to England, to Bath in England, and there was no work. And so we had a certain amount of savings and we'd spent a lot of money to move, and, it was kind of ridiculous. Anyway, we borrowed a car, we Airbnb'd, we got our older son into year 7 over there into a beautiful school in Bath, and we rented a house and crossed our fingers and he got some work. And weirdly, after moving across the world, I was pregnant. And somehow I kind of felt it was different. I don't know why. Maybe because we'd moved, maybe because I felt like I was in a different place after all this time and after the Whole30, and I don't know, and literally being in a different place. And this time the pregnancy was a dream. And I would go for checkups. They would try to intervene because I was, nearly 45, and obviously that's a very uncomfortable situation for medical staff with no medical records in the country we were in. They had no medical records for me. So they kept trying to, give me preventative toxic medicine, and I kept researching it myself and then going back and saying, I'm not taking that. I'm not suggesting that you do that. I'm not advising anybody to do that. But for me, that was the right thing to do. And sure enough, doing my best not to have an intervention around the birth, because of course they really want to intervene when you're an older woman. And the acupuncturist was still saying, I was having acupuncture, and he was still saying, your body is not like a 45-year-old body, like it's like a younger body, which I knew because I felt really good. Anyway, it was remarkable. I had an incredible birth, which you can read about, and I'll link to the show notes, partly because of beautiful birth education that I'd had with my second child. Shout out to the She Births program, but also just a really incredible team. I had a doula, I had beautiful midwives, and I really was empowered, with my third birth to have a birth with as little intervention as possible. And the birth was some medical intervention that was required, and, I trusted my medical practitioners, but also I challenged them where necessary, and it was as little as possible. So there was a pessary for induction, and there was oxytocin, just the pessary, and then breaking the waters. And then about an hour later, an incredible, powerful birth process ensued. I moved a lot. I didn't lie on my back. I only lay on my side when I needed a rest. And I had a lot of help from the people in the room, including my husband, who was also empowered through his education around birth, to be there, to put his hands on my back when I had a contraction, to not be afraid of the process. And the doula and the midwife literally just sat on the other side of the room and said, trust your body, you know what to do. It was incredible. And things happened. There was still a tiny bit of monitoring. But it was an amazing birth. And out came this little boy. I had tremors after the birth, but I felt so empowered and absolutely blessed by the experience. And there I was with this little boy who we have raised, and who we raised in Bath with incredible breastfeeding support from the La Leche League volunteers and from breastfeeding volunteers that had weekly, if not bi-weekly, meetings of women to support each other through the breastfeeding process, which is just an absolute game changer. All of that to say, and this story is for men and women, when you have a deep inner knowing about something that life has in store for you, do not let it go. This is not a story of manifestation. I mean, it is, but that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is the deep trust that we can develop with this companion, our body, as we walk through life. And when we develop it and when we invest in that relationship, we know the difference between something that feels true deeply in our body, in our psyche, and something which does not. And that, for me, brought a whole human being into our life, and a treasured and honoured member of our family who brings the most remarkable energy and fun and sensitivity and emotion. He's a remarkable young boy. And I adore spending time with him and do all I can to spend as much time with him as possible. And it is not lost on me that we are extremely fortunate to have him with us. So what interests me about this story, and what I want to share about this story for anyone else, it doesn't have to be about a birth. This could be the birth of an idea, the birth of a business, the birth of a lifestyle. It could be anything that you wish to bring into your life, that we need to have times of struggle and suffering maybe along the way. Possibly. Do we need to have times of rest and replenishment when we've made a big push and it hasn't succeeded? Absolutely. Do we need to seek support? Yes, I was so supported by so many people. I really had a team of people that were backing me and tending to things and really helping me find my humanity through this process. It was tough. And those people, you know who you are, I'll never forget them, and I'll never forget each piece of that puzzle that we pieced together. I sincerely believe we are not meant to do this alone. It's why I do the work I do now as a somatic therapist in my community, the Commons, where people come in and spend time together, and we spend time together collectively supporting each other through what we're walking through. I just don't believe we're meant to walk alone through these trials, through these quests. There are some parts of it for sure that I had to do alone and on my own, and that I had to reckon with and wrestle with personally, for sure. But overall, this was a collective process. So I guess for this 100th episode, what I want to leave you with today is just a sense of possibility and a sense of trust in yourself and your own belief. And know that sometimes things don't come when we think they're supposed to come. And we may not have an idea even what this thing really is in clear form. But if you believe and you know that something is coming and something is made for you and meant for you, I want to back you to really trust that belief and to learn the difference between the distraction and the aligned path, between what takes you away from vitality and away from life and what brings you closer to it, what is life-affirming. Because that is the stuff that gets us to the next growing edge and edges us beyond our comfort zone into new and exciting and uncertain spaces and places and experiences. And in my experience, they are worth it. And with that, I wish you the absolute best on your path. And I'm here if you want to tell me more about that. I'm here. Please reach out. Go well, humans. Thank you for being here with us on Unboxable. My hope is that today's episode gave you a moment of insight, peace, or connection to carry into the rest of your week. If it did, please share the show with someone you love or subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you're ready for deeper support and a place to sustain your growth, you can find other resources, both free and paid, in the show notes. As you go through your week, remember that the things that separate you from yourself or from others or from nature are not nearly as powerful as the things that connect you. Until next time, go gently, my friends.